A year before the Brady Bunch, another TV family visited Kings Island with the Partridge Family, filming episode number 68 at Kings Island. The series was available on ABC, very popular in the 1970s. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics. Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about. Ryan,
Yes.
the Partridge Family. Now, not as popular as the Brady Bunch episode, but still has a pretty good following out there.
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny because the similarities are different between the two. Um, one, what was really weird about contrasting them with the Brady Bunch, and that's not the subject of this episode, obviously, but the Partridge Family was a family that toured and were a band, while the Brady Bunch was a family that was normal, but in reality, the cast toured. So I always thought that was a strange dynamic between the two. But yeah, interesting episode. And this was before the Brady Bunch. I feel like everybody feels like it was after, but it was before. It was filmed in.
No, it was filmed in 72.
Mhm.
And it was episode, as I mentioned, episode number 68 of their series. It was filmed, it was over a 5-day period, August 7th through the
Mhm.
11th in 72. And then it premiered in 1973 in January of that year. So didn't premiere the year the park was open. But yeah, it was definitely done in the first year. And then the next year, the Brady Bunch came.
So Don, I think most people are familiar with the plot of the Brady Bunch when they're looking for the blueprints. But what was the plot of the Partridge Family episode that was filmed at Kings Island? Just for those who haven't seen it in a while.
Well, I think of the two, I think that the Partridge Family plot was a little bit better than the Brady's. With the Brady's, it was, Mike Brady lost the plans. They had to go all over the park to try to find it. But this one had a little bit more, a few more storylines in it. But this episode, the title of it, I Left My Heart in Cincinnati, it refers to Keith Partridge, played by David Cassidy. His younger brother, Danny, was Danny Bonaducci playing that role. And their manager of the band, Reuben Kincaid, they were all trying to date Marianne Mobley, who played the role of the park publicist, and it was Aubrey Parsons in this episode. So they're all trying to date her. And, of course, Danny's just a little kid at the time. Ruben's, I don't know, in his 60s or 70s, whatever it was in the episode. And then you got David Cassidy, which probably would have been about her age. But each one of them had different angles and how they were trying to date her. And that made it kind of a little more breadth to the episode, I think, than what you saw in the Brady's.
Yeah, now I from what I recall, and I did get to watch like clips of the episode, but I haven't seen it in a while. They opened with them doing a concert under the Eiffel Tower. Am I correct about that?
Front of International Street, front of the fountain.
In front of the fountain.
There's
Okay.
there's several yeah there's several photos out there of them performing there. But yeah, it opens with them doing a concert. They're staying at the Kings Island Inn, which was located across the street. Uh, Cincinnati Reds great baseball Hall of Famer Johnny Bench has an appearance in this. His role was as a waiter at the Kings Island Inn. So a lot of different fun things in it. You talk about the Partridge Family, cast some notable names, and you had Shirley Jones played the mom. David Cassidy. You had Susan Day, who I guess people haven't heard from for a decade
Yeah.
or so, but Danny Bonaducci, Susan Crowe. I mean, she passed away maybe 7, 8 years ago. She was only 52. But Brian Forster, he was the younger brother. So they were all shown during this episode, running around the park, enjoying many of the park's rides when they weren't performing on International Street. A number of the rides you see in this episode no longer with us. They're gone, but not forgotten. You had Haley's Comet, Der Spending Keggers, Wheel of Fortune, but some that's still in operation today. You got Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, known back then as the Log Flume, was featured. The Racer, you had the Grand Carousel. So many of the rides that are still there today are featured in this episode.
Why do you think it is that the Brady Bunch episode, which had about as much airtime in the park as this one, has really gone down, and everybody who's a fan of Kings Island knows all about it, and they know the plot and they know the characters. But this one seems like it plays second fiddle. Why do you think that is?
It wasn't out there in reruns forever like the Brady Bunch
Mm.
was. Once the Partridge Family was canceled, it was canceled. The Brady Bunch, when it was canceled, it ran in syndication. Since then, it's still going today. So I think that was a big part of it. Just that it was more available. More people had a chance to see it.
So, I mean, I guess we could also chalk that up to like, with the original ESPN jump, how that was on Wide World of Sports, but nobody's like, have you ever seen that episode of Wide World of Sports that features Kings Island? So yeah, it was a one-time thing, and then it didn't really come back. But yeah, so one of the things you mentioned this, and I was watching clips of it, but they're riding the log flume now, Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, and Danny Bonaducci's basically standing up on the back of the ride. Do you think that that was like a production decision, or do you think that it's because it's Bonaducci and that's what he does?
I think it's Danny Bonaducci. I mean, no discipline as a kid, no discipline as an adult. Danny's going to do Danny, and I think that that's what that was about. Because I would imagine after that episode aired and they saw him standing up, that probably didn't go over well with park officials.
Yeah, I mean, probably in today's world, it's way worse than it was then because, you know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, people are like, it's Danny Bonaducci, almost died, whatever. But nowadays, it's like, oh, he stood up on the ride. I should try that.
Yeah, well, he's in the very back. There's like that back rest on the log flume boats. So he was kind of leaning up against that. But yeah, he's coming down the hill. He's standing up and goes around the turn. Where the queue line is. And but yeah, that's probably Danny just being Danny.
Yeah, that was my guess too. I've never met Danny Bonaducci, but I've heard that he's interesting. Now, with that being said, when you were working at Kings Island, did you ever float the idea of having a reunion for the Partridge Family like you did the Brady Bunch?
We did. Yeah, we definitely talked about that. We did reach out to see about getting them. Now, Shirley Jones, was getting up there. She didn't do a lot of traveling as much, anymore. But just trying to get a time where you could get at least three of them together was difficult. Danny Bonaducci was hosting a radio show. I want to say in Philadelphia at the time. David was still performing, uh, in different nightclubs around the country. So he was still out there doing his thing. Susan Day had, you know, no response when we tried to reach
Hmm.
out to her people about wanting to do it. But the three that, they kind of, would have been interested would have been David Cassidy, Shirley Jones, and Danny Bonaducci if it would have worked out with all the dates. But it just never, was something that at that time when we were looking to do that would have been 2008. When we brought in the Brady Bunch came back, it was an anniversary of their episode of their first episode that they did at the park back in '73. So, we brought them in 2008 and 2013, and in between that was the time, you were looking at the Partridge Family to see what their availability might be, but it just never worked out.
Yeah. Do you think it would have had anything like the draw of the Brady Bunch?
I don't think it would have had the Brady Bunch draw because the Brady Bunch, just around the country. I mean, everybody's seen it, grew up with it. So there's definitely a lot more, interest and awareness of the Kings Island episode from that. So not the same level, but it would have definitely been very popular. It certainly would have filled the theaters, with Q&A shows, and I think that would have done all right there. So yeah, I think it definitely would have, had interest and sold some
I,
tickets.
I agree. I think that the two people that you would have needed to have had would be Bonaducci and David Cassidy. David Cassidy,
Yeah, and there was some, like, well, Bonaducci's kind of a wild card. We don't know what he's going to say. And I was like, well, just bring him in there and haunt,
yeah,
so maybe
be
at
like,
that point in
listen, we
time. But
survived Robbie Knievel. We can survive Danny Bonaducci, we think.
yeah, now they did 96 episodes, and Bonaducci, in a number of different articles about the series, talked about his favorite place that they shot and did an episode was the Kings Island episode, and he was, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 years old at the time. But just imagine being a kid and you've got this whole amusement park, to roam around and ride all the rides. And so he really had a great time.
Yeah, I mean, and that sounds similar to you had actually sent me two of the Peter and Greg Brady have their own podcast, the Real Brady Bros, and I remember I still listen to it actually, but you sent me the episode of them talking about their Kings Island one, and they were like, we had never heard of Kings Island, we'd never been to Cincinnati, but we were so glad to be able to not be in the studio. That alone was worth it, and then we got to ride rides at this amusement park, so they probably had a similar sentiment.
Oh, exactly. And if you haven't seen this episode, definitely check it out. It's if you're interested in some of the early years of Kings Island, the footage in this episode really has what I think is the best footage of the park from that first season. Now, you might see a couple of old news clips or something out there, but this one is really the best footage you're going to see from 1972 when the park opened.
Yeah, I completely agree. And plus, for those of you who are interested in the history, it does show a lot of the Kings Island Inn as well. That's something you can't do anymore. I mean, it was torn down. The sign's still there for some reason, but yeah, the Kings Island Inn was torn down. So that was a big part of the complex that was Kings
It
Island.
was state of the art at the time. We're going to have to do an episode just on that at some
Yep.
point, but yeah, I mean that was state of the art, and it just looked beautiful in the episode. You had the pool, the you had you know, the lobby and everything. It just was really an amazing place for its
Yeah,
time.
very good restaurant there. I never ate there. I only went to the Kings Island Inn once, but yeah, but that was the last 2 years it was open, so it was incredibly I always thought it was weird because on the outside, it looked like it was right out of 1972, but on the inside, it was like they kept it up, they had new carpet and, new fixtures and stuff, so it was definitely nicer on the inside than it was on the outside, but, unfortunately, that's been torn down and there's nothing been done with it, so, hopefully someday somebody opens up a new Kings Island hotel or something, not to give them any ideas, Alright. Don, any final thoughts on this, Partridge Family episode?
No, it's a must-watch episode if you're a Kings Island fan. If you haven't, seen it, it's available out there on different. I think like what is it like Hulu and some of the
So,
different
I looked it up, and
channels you
as
can
of
find
this
it on.
recording, and this is late September of 23, it is available on Tubi TV, on the Roku app, and you can purchase it through Apple TV and Amazon. So, you can just buy the 1 episode and, what was the episode number, 66, you said?
68.
68, yeah, episode 68, I Left My Heart in Cincinnati. Awesome, cool.
Yeah, so definitely check. Yeah, definitely check it out. You're gonna really want to see the footage of Kings Island from 1972. You're not gonna find any other opportunity to see better video than that.
Awesome. Right, cool. Well, that was definitely an interesting discussion. You dropped this episode idea on me kind of late in the game, and I was like, yeah, I haven't thought about that episode in a long time. So, for those of you who've listened this far in, and it's not a big tax because these are like 15-minute episodes, Don and I are debating doing a watch along with both this episode as well as the Brady Bunch episode of Kings Island. And the way that it works, for those of you who haven't experienced that, is we'll watch the episode on Paramount Plus or whatever and we'll record our thoughts. And then if you want to, you can listen to the podcast while you're watching the episode. So we're doing our commentary on it. So if that's of interest to you, then yeah, comment on this video or tweet at us at tower_topics and, let us know that that's something that you'd be willing to do. So cool. Awesome. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.